Right then, how I heat my house off-grid. Here's the outside of the house, just to give you some context. 120 square metres of floor space spread over two floors. So it's not a great big house, but it's not a tiny house either. Now, full disclosure, this house, my house, is not off-grid. Yet. One day I want it to be. Right now it's not. This is a heat pump, and it's turned off. This has been turned off since October, ever since the electricity prices started to spiral way out of control. And it wasn't that cold in October. In December it was cold. It was minus 20 in December. I still didn't turn it on. This then is the wood burner in the living room. When I bought the house, there was nothing here. There had been a wood burner here. In the 70s it was taken out, and that was pretty common back then, because in the 70s and 80s and a bit into the 90s electricity was really cheap. So everybody wanted to become modern, the toilet moved inside, all of this sort of stuff, and everybody threw out their old wood burners, because it is a lot easier just to turn on an electric radiator, and they were very cheap to run back then. But now they're not. Now they are ridiculously expensive to run. So there had been a wood burner here. When I bought the place, there was nothing. So I put this in, I think about 5 years ago. And what is it? Well, it's a wood burner called Sedan 10. Sort of a strange name. And it's made by Eurofire, which is a French company, and I'll get back to that later. I went to my local builder's merchant and I wanted a tube of silicone or a paintbrush or something, and I saw this thing sitting there, and originally they wanted, I think, €1,500 for it. And when I got there it was marked down to €800. So I said, great, I'll have it. And it is a good wood burner. It's cast iron, and it weighs 120 kilos. So it was a bit of a job getting it in here, but the significance of it weighing 120 kilos is the mass of the wood burner, and the mass of the cast iron in the wood burner is what holds the heat. So if you've got a wood burner that's made of sheet metal, it'll get warm very quickly, but as soon as the fire dies down, it'll cool down. This holds the heat for, well, it'll hold the heat from evening to morning. And on the top I've got some fire bricks. These didn't come with the wood burner, I just found these. Anything you can do to add mass to the wood burner is good, because the mass that you add also holds extra heat. If you can't find these nice fire bricks, then you can use bricks, you can use stones, you can use like a big frying or a big saucepan full of sand. That'll also work. Anyway, French wood burner. Would I buy another French wood burner? No. If I lived in France I would. I don't live in France, I live in Sweden. And there is one company in the whole of Scandinavia that imports these things. And that's not a problem when you buy it, but it turned out it's a problem when you want spare parts for it. Inside the wood burner there are cast iron plates that protect the main body so that it doesn't get damaged by the heat. The cast iron plate at the back is cracked. I was sitting here one day and it cracked, and it was a huge bang. It scared me, and I went round and tried to work out what it was that made this huge bang, and in the end I found a crack right the way down the back plate. So I called up the chap who imports these things, and he's strange. He's a very nice man, but I don't know, maybe a bit of Alzheimer's or something. I could not get him to order me a new plate. I tried and I tried and I tried, and he talked about everything. He was really nice to talk to, but yeah, just nothing ever happened. And then I went to another place that sells wood burners and said to them, well, you know, can you get me this piece, this spare part? And they tried, and they couldn't get it either. So I don't quite know what I'm going to do about that. I've got two alternatives. One is to throw the wood burner out and get a new one. I'm not going to do that because there's many years left in it. The other alternative is I know a chap who does iron casting. So if I can get, well, I'll take the plate out and take it to him, I think he might be able to make me a new plate. But it shouldn't be that complicated. If I bought a Scandinavian wood burner, it would have cost me more, but I'd have been able to get spare parts for it. So, yeah. When you buy a wood burner, maybe you don't immediately think about where do I get spare parts, but it turns out it is relevant. So while we're on the subject of spare parts, the glass in the door. The glass in the door really serves no other purpose other than you can look in and see how the fire is burning, and that is useful to be able to do that. And it's cosy, and it is really cosy. So I would never have a wood burner without glass in the door, because it's just so nice to have. But the glass in the door is not glass. It's not glass. If you manage to break this, and you say, oh well, I'll just go and cut a piece of glass to the right size and stick it in there, the first time after that you get the wood burn up to temperature, it'll either crack or melt, or probably both. So this isn't glass. What it is, it's actually transparent ceramic. That shouldn't be a problem to get, because there are people who can make that to any size you want. But bear that in mind, if you ever need to replace this glass, I'm calling it glass, it's not glass, you can break it. If you hit it hard enough, it'll break. But it won't break from the heat of the fire. So if you ever need to replace one of those, bear that in mind. Don't just cut a piece of glass to size. This thing is a little stove fan. This runs on the heat from the stove. It's the same, it's kind of the same principle as a Stirling engine, but not really. The principle's kind of the same. The Stirling engine is completely different. This generates electricity, and it's got a little electric motor on it. And the way in which it generates electricity is through the temperature differential. So on the bottom it's very, very hot, and on the top it's got these cooling fins. So it's still, I can hold it up here. It's not cold, but it's the difference in temperature which generates current, which drives the electric motor. It's good to have a fan because it moves the air around. Hot air is a bit odd. It'll get stuck in certain places. It'll get stuck at one side of a room, it'll get stuck in one room and not go out to the next room. It's kind of weird how it works. We can talk a little bit about that later as well. So this is a fan. A fan is good to have to move the air around. This is a small fan, so it doesn't move a lot of air. It's obviously doing something. It's obviously better than not having a fan. They're also quite expensive, so you've got a sort of a relatively small advantage to having one of these. I have one because I think it's really cool. I like the technology behind it. I like the idea that this thing works. It doesn't take batteries. You don't plug it into the electricity. It just works. As soon as the wood burner comes up to temperature, it starts spinning, and that whole concept just interests me. This is the sort of low-tech, off-grid solutions that we need. We don't need electric cars, we don't need massive wind farms, we just need simple stuff like this that works. I think this is brilliant. So this glass on the front of the stove, I'm still calling it glass, this will give you a good indication of how the fire is burning. If your glass is black and covered in soot and you can't see through it, then you're not burning hot enough. You haven't got enough oxygen going into the fire, or you've got wood that's unseasoned. As it is now, there's a little bit of soot and ash, but not an awful lot. So this tells me that the fire is burning well, and has been burning well under the last week. There are certain wood burners that have what's called an air wash system, and that means that some of the hot air is directed up and along the glass, and that helps to burn the soot and ash off. I don't think this one has that, because if you try to burn wood that's too green, it gets very, very sooty. if you want to clean this stuff, you can do it with, well, I use the Swedish classic Svinto. This is basically, all it is wire wool with soap in it. It's fine wire wool with soap in it. And you wet it and you clean the inside of the glass with it, and then you wipe it off with a piece of kitchen towel. It will not scratch the glass. I don't know if it would scratch ordinary glass, but this transparent ceramic glass, it does not scratch, so that's fine. And so, as far as the rest of it's set up, here I have a big wooden box full of firewood, and I can get quite a lot of firewood in this. That's important, I think. If you're using this as a primary heat source, you can't keep going out and bringing in firewood the whole time. That gets really old really quickly. Might be raining, might be snowing, you might be tired. You've got to have wood inside. You've got to have enough wood inside. This will last me 2 or 3 days. The other thing is, the wood needs to be, or the wood should be warm. The wood that you burn in the wood burner should be at room temperature. If it's -10 Celsius outside and you take in wood, that wood is also at -10 Celsius. So when you put it in a wood burner, it's got to warm it up even more. So if it's inside, then it's at 20-22 degrees when you put it in the wood burner. So you've gained, now, depending upon how cold it is outside, you've gained maybe 30 or 40 degrees that you don't need to heat the wood up before it starts to burn. On the other side down there, I have kindling, and you need kindling. You're not going to get this to start to burn. You're not going to get this to start to burn either. You need small bits of kindling and something else. You used to use newspaper. Newspaper has changed a lot over the years. Newspaper is now, it's manufactured so that it's easy to recycle. So the ink is not the same as it used to be, and the actual paper is not the same as it used to be. There's a lot of stone dust in paper nowadays. The shiny paper, that's really just sort of stone dust. So if you burn that, it doesn't really burn at all, and if you can get it to burn, you get massive piles of ash. So don't try and burn that, it's just hopeless. Ordinary newspaper, yeah, it kind of does okay, but it's not as good as it used to be. One of the best things you can use is, well, not sawdust, but like wood shavings, let's say. Yeah, that's what it's called, wood shavings. So if you've been out planing a piece of wood in your in your carpentry shop, save all of that stuff. That's really good for lighting a fire. I want to experiment a little bit later on with making firelighters with old bits of candle and newspaper. That should work well. Old cooking oil works well. When I wash up a frying pan, I take a bit of kitchen paper and dry out the bottom of the frying pan so that that oil's not going down the sink, because it'll cause a blockage, and I don't want to be dealing with that because that's just hassle. So don't throw that bit of paper away with oil in it, save that, and then the next day when you light the fire again, that's really good for lighting it. This wood burner, and only this wood burner then, heats the whole house. There's an art to it. First of all, you have to get to know your wood burner. It took me a while. It'll take you a while with the new wood burner, or if you're new to running a wood burner. But if you do it right, you can load it up with wood, go to bed, and in the morning everything's still warm. You don't want to stick it full of wood and cut the air supply off, because it'll just sort of sizzle all night and it doesn't burn effectively. So there's a sort of a balance there. You don't want it roaring away, because then it'll burn out quite quickly, and you don't want everything completely shut down either, because then it doesn't burn efficiently and you get a lot of creosote and everything in the chimney, and then you have a risk for chimney fires. So experiment with it, and also experiment with different types of wood. Birch is good, for example. if you want it to burn for a long time. Birch burns slowly and gives off a lot of heat. Pine, not so much. Pine's good for getting the fire going. It burns pretty quickly, gives off a lot of heat, but it goes out quite fast as well. Those are the two main types of firewood I have. If you live in a different part of the world, which you probably do, then you're going to have access to different types of firewood. Be careful with hardwoods, because they can get way too hot. I've heard of people melting stoves with hardwood. I don't know if that's one of those things like a swan will break your arm, but I've heard stories about it. This thing then, this is my wood stove in the kitchen. This is a completely different animal. This is not like a wood burner. This isn't like the wood burner in the living room. This is for cooking on. This will not heat up the house. It'll heat up the house a little bit, but the purpose of this is not to heat up the house. It was never designed for that. It's a completely different animal. So it's got a rail on the front for drying your kitchen towels. It's got an oven, which I don't use. Here we've got the firebox, and here we've got the ash box. So the firebox isn't particularly big. You can't get big bits of wood in there, and you can't get very much wood in there. Now there's an art to cooking on one of these. It's a little bit like the old-fashioned electric cookers. I grew up in England, and I grew up with a gas cooker. And if you turn up the heat on the gas cooker, it goes immediately. If you turn down the heat on the gas cooker, it cools down immediately. And what you're cooking on it heats up and cools down relatively quickly. On an old-fashioned electric cooker, it takes a lot longer time for it to respond to the controls, because the cook plate is hot and that has to cool down before you see any difference in the temperature. The same thing happens when you turn up the temperature. It takes a lot longer time. This is like an old-fashioned electric cooker times 10. It takes really quite a long time before you see a change in temperature once you've regulated the temperature up or down. You can cook on these. It's not difficult, it just takes a bit of getting used to. And I think it's pretty magical to be able to cook your dinner using bits of wood inside your house. I think that's great. So the way that you regulate the temperature with these is you've got a little damper here that you can open and close, and if you want to, you can open the whole door. You can also open this door as well, if you want to get a lot of air in to get the temperature up quickly. And then if you want to cool it down, you close the damper and close the doors. But not only that, a lot of the way in which you regulate the temperature in one of these is by choosing the size and the amount of wood that you stick in the firebox. So if you want to raise the temperature quickly, you add more air and you put in a lot of small sticks which burn quickly and give off a lot of heat. So there's an art to this as well. It's perfectly possible to cook on it. You can also move your pots around on the cook surface. So in certain places it's warmer, in certain places it's cooler. So you can regulate the temperature that way. You have to shuffle things around a little bit more, but it's perfectly doable. And this is a Husqvarna number 726. This is, I think, from around about 1930. The older ones, they were black cast iron, and then the slightly newer ones, it's almost 100 years old, but the slightly newer ones were enamelled, often white, but you can find them in other colours as well. And ironically, unlike the wood burner in the living room, I can get all manner of spare parts for this. I can get an entire stove in spare parts, because they're still being produced, which is rather fascinating. And yes, I am going to put some new tiles on here when I redo the kitchen. So here's the top of it. we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 cooking plates on it. And all of these come off. So we've got our special metal stick with a hook in the end, and this is original equipment. Whoop. We can lift all of these off. This piece also comes out. That's a separate piece, so that when you heat the stove up and it expands, and then when it later cools down and contracts, it doesn't crack. So now we can see a little bit better what's going on in here. That's the firebox door, and here's the firebox. So the fire's burning in there, and so we've got fire here, and it goes over this bit in here. This is the oven. So the fire and the smoke and the gases come up here, over the oven, down the side there, and the chimney exits around about here, but down a bit. So the warmth goes all the way around the oven. So because of this construction, and because of the fact that there are a lot of gaps and everything, because the cooktop here isn't airtight. All of these sit quite loosely. These can be quite tricky to light. Yeah. The first time I lit this it went kind of okay. The second time I lit this it was a catastrophe. Yeah, talking of catastrophe. Be quiet. So, the second time I lit this there wasn't a breath of wind outside, and we had low pressure, low atmospheric pressure. And what that tried to do was push air down the chimney at the same time that I was trying to light this thing and get air to go up the chimney. And I got the whole house full of smoke. And I opened the door, I opened every single window, and the smoke stayed in the house because there wasn't even a breeze. So there are two ways to get these to light. And this is the same principle for anything, for any wood burner or wood stove that you can't get to light. You need to get some hot air going up the chimney. Because what happens is that you get like a stop in the chimney. You get a big lump of, for a better word, a big lump of cold air that sits in the top of the chimney. And the hot air that you're trying to get to go up the chimney goes up, it hits this cold air, and it turns around and comes back down again. So you need to get some hot air to go up the chimney and get a bit of draw in the chimney. So down here there is a little, if I can get it out, there is a little space, and you can stuff a piece of newspaper in there and get some hot air going up the chimney. On this side is a little hatch. Which is stuck. Hang on. Okay, got you on a tripod again, so that is really stuck. There we go. Right, so this little hole here, this connects to the chimney flue that goes from the wood stove on the other side of the wall. And the primary reason why this is here is for when you sweep the chimney. You can get all of the ash and soot out here. But even more usefully, if you want to light the wood stove and it's wet and raining and you haven't had a fire in it for a while, you need to get some heat in the chimney, you can take a piece of newspaper. Take a piece of newspaper, stick it in there like that, and light it. And off it goes. And if it's really cold and wet and miserable outside, you'll have to do that several times. If you put a piece of newspaper in it and it just burns, then that's not good enough. You'll need to put several more bits of newspaper in, And when you get so far that you put in a piece of newspaper and it doesn't just burn, when it tries to climb up the chimney and it really burns fiercely, then you know that you've got some draw going in the chimney. And then it's time to go and light the wood stove. Let's talk about the chimney. It's obviously a very important part of all of this. If you haven't got a chimney, you can't burn firewood inside your house, obviously. But it's not good enough just to have a chimney, you have to look after your chimney. So in Scandinavia, there's a law. Well, not a law, it's more like a building code that says that if you use your chimney, you have to have it swept. You can't get around that. I'm not normally in favour of that sort of you must do this, you must do that, but just that law I think is rather good. If you burn unseasoned wood, don't burn unseasoned wood, it's pointless, it just smokes and it doesn't really give out any heat. But if you do that, if you do want to do that, you're going to get a lot of creosote and tar and funny stuff that builds up on the inside of the chimney. And that's a really good way to get a chimney fire. I've never had a chimney fire, I've seen a chimney fire, they're scary. The whole chimney ends up like a Roman candle and there's sparks flying out of the top of it. I say, well, it's a chimney, it won't burn. There are two problems with a chimney fire. The first is that the whole chimney gets very, very hot, way hotter than it's supposed to get. And you can crack bricks, you can crack the mortar can fall out, and you end up with a chimney that isn't airtight. And that's not good. The second thing is that the house is always drawing in air. Especially when you're burning wood in a wood burner, and especially when you've got a chimney fire going on, because then there are massive amounts of air going through the wood burner, because everything's just running away, burning very, very fast. So the house is sucking in air. So you've got currents of air being sucked into the house, and that sucks in sparks. And this house is made of wood, and any house, there's enough flammable materials in the construction that, yeah, that is not a good situation to be in. So here, the chimney sweep comes round. He comes once a year and sweeps this chimney, and the chimney for the wood stove he sweeps once every other year, because I don't use the wood stove that much. If the power goes out, I use the wood stove to cook on, and so at Christmas time I use the wood stove to cook on because it's sort of fun. Otherwise I'm a bit lazy, I do tend to use the electric cooker. If electricity prices keep on going up like they are now, I might revisit that thought. So the chimney sweeper comes round, and it doesn't cost very much, and I just think that's really well spent money to know that the chimney's okay and probably isn't going to catch fire. If I wanted to, I could go on a course and I could learn how to be a chimney sweep. Not so that I could go and sweep somebody else's chimney, but so that I could sweep my own chimney. And that course isn't very expensive either. And then I could sweep my own chimney and I wouldn't need a chimney sweep. And I'd save about €100 a year. But I don't like heights. So, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm quite happy to pay someone who's not afraid to climb on the roof to come and sweep my chimney for me. I think that's money well spent. The wood stove in the kitchen, that's always been here since the house was built. So that's been there for nearly 100 years. And when the house was built, this house has been moved twice. And that was quite common, that you moved a house. From the beginning, it was on the other side of the road. And obviously it's not there anymore. And then they moved it about 50 metres this way. And that's why my workshop is so far away from the house, my workshop and my woodshed, that's why that's so far away from the house. The house used to be a couple of metres away, but then they moved it again, and now it's up here. And I think the last time it was moved was probably, I think at the beginning of the 1930s, I think, I'm not sure. So that wood stove's been there ever since it was last moved. and it's always been in use. So when I bought this place, there was nothing wrong with that chimney, or that chimney pipe. However, there hadn't been a wood burner here since the 1970s. So, yeah, I had to do something about the chimney flue here, because it wasn't airtight. Yeah, and that was quite a story. So it wasn't airtight, and what happens is that it rains in the chimney, it snows in the chimney. If you never heat the chimney up, it never really dries out properly. And obviously this chimney flue wasn't being heated up because there wasn't any wood burner here. And the bricks at the top can crack, they can freeze and crack, and the mortar can fall out. It's quite soft mortar in this chimney, so that can fall out. So when I installed this, I had the chimney sweep come round, and he pressurised that chimney flue. He climbed up on the roof and he put an inflatable rubber cushion down in the chimney flue from the top, and then he came down here, stuck another one in there with a valve in it and pressurised it. And the chimney has to hold a certain amount of pressure for a certain amount of time, and it didn't. So we're upstairs now in the room that is, it's my wardrobe and my office. Yeah. This is a cupboard, obviously. Yeah, how to identify everyday objects with John. Great. Behind this is the chimney coming up, and once upon a time there was also a wood burner up here. And sadly that's no longer here. I would like to try to find another one, another antique wood burner, and just put it back to how it used to be. I don't know, I like that sort of stuff. Anyway, there was a hole in the chimney where the wood burner had been connected, and that hole was still there. It's not there now, I bricked it up, but it was still there when the first time I had the chimney pressurised and tested. And I thought the hole was plugged up, and what it was plugged up with was this, and I'd never seen one of these before, and I thought, oh well, that's obviously an approved way of plugging a hole in a chimney. And yeah, when we worked out that the chimney wasn't airtight, I started looking at it a bit more, and I levered it out and turned it over. Yeah, somebody had stuck an ashtray in the hole in the chimney, and it fitted really well. It was like it was supposed to be there, but no, obviously it wasn't. So I took the ashtray out, as you do, bricked up the hole in the chimney, had it tested again. It still wasn't airtight. So yeah, then I had to repair the chimney. Now, there are two ways of repairing a chimney. Well, I guess there are three ways. The first and least practical way to repair a chimney is to knock the whole thing down inside the house and build it up again. And I didn't fancy doing that, and it's not really necessary either. The second way to repair a chimney is to stick a bit of pipe in it. You go up on the roof with a bit of pipe and you stick it all the way down, and then you know that the pipe inside the chimney flue is airtight. Now that works. And the third way, and the way in which I did it, was I repaired it from the inside with mortar. And the way you do that is you go up on the chimney with a winch, and you drop the winch wire all the way down the chimney. You tie a cushion on the end, not a sofa cushion, obviously a special cushion on the end, and then you go back on the roof and you winch the cushion up, and at the same time you tip mortar into the chimney. And you sort of have to know what you're doing, because you need to tip the right amount of mortar into the chimney, because otherwise it can go wrong. Yeah, but I did that. I tried to get someone to do it for me, and I couldn't. So in the end I had to do it myself. I did it myself and it worked. Time for drawing. To explain why I did what I did when I repaired my chimney. Now, the process that I use is called glidgjutning in Swedish, obviously, which doesn't help very much. I do not know what it's called in English. According to Google Translate, it is called sliding form casting. and that may be correct, or that may be Google Translate being Google Translate. I do not know. Anyway, right, we're on the roof, okay? And this is the chimney, and that's the ridge. So, bird's eye view, looking at the chimney on the roof from above. And in my chimney, I have 3 flues. And they're actually all the same size, but that's a wonky drawing. This one is the wood stove in the kitchen. This one is the wood burner in the living room, and that's the one that wouldn't hold pressure. And this one is ventilation from the kitchen. So in the olden days, way back when you didn't have a fan or a cooker hood or a fan over your cooker, you just had this flue that went up, and it sort of worked on a self-ventilating principle, and it was better than nothing. Because if you've got a lot of hot air in the kitchen goes up, the hot air in the kitchen goes up, and it goes up in this flue here. So it does work, it's just not as effective as having a fan in it. Anyway, this is the one that wouldn't hold pressure, wouldn't hold air. And what do we have for options? Well, we can cast it internally with mortar, or we can stick a pipe in it. Well, let's say we're going to stick a pipe in it. This is square. I've drawn it square because it is square. The pipe is round. And with that, we've got 2 problems. One problem is that we no longer have the same area. We've cut down on the area, the cross-section of the flue. And that's not good, because you don't get as much draw. You don't get as much air in the wood burner, and you don't get as much air going out of the wood burner. So that cuts down on the efficiency. So that's a significant problem. And the other problem, which I think is even more significant, is that in order to make this work, this pipe needs to be insulated. So you stick the pipe in, and that in itself I don't think would have been particularly easy, because this flue is not, it doesn't go straight down. It bends a little bit, not much, but I think, yeah, it would have been a bit of a challenge to stand up on the roof and try to stick a pipe down there. But this needs to be insulated, and this needs to be insulated with vermiculite, which is like small balls of volcanic rock, and it insulates very well. And it needs to be insulated because if it isn't, there's a lot of air around the pipe, and that cools the pipe down. And that's not good, because then you get a lot of creosote and tar that sticks to the inside of the pipe, and then we're back into chimney fire territory. So you don't want that. So you have to insulate around it. Well, what's the problem with insulating around it? Well, the problem is that it's insulation. So if you've got an open flue like we have here, it's heating up the whole chimney all the way up. If it's insulated, it's not heating up the chimney. And going back to one of the first things I said, that cast iron wood burner in the living room, that weighs 120 kilos. And that's not because it's cool to have a heavy wood burner, that's because the more mass you have that you can heat up, the longer it's going to carry on giving out warmth, giving out heat after the fire's died down. So we've got 120 kilos of mass in the wood burner. We've also got, I don't know, several tons of mass in the actual chimney itself. So if you're going to heat up the whole chimney, it's going to hold the warmth much, much longer, and the whole system's going to be far more effective. The last thing I want to talk about is moving air around. So if we say we've got a cross section of the house here, here's a ceiling, and we've got one room here and one room here. So we've got a wall, and we've got a door opening, like that. Obviously let's put a threshold down there. So let's draw a door. But we're going to assume that the door is open. That's why the lines are dotted. That's what that means. So the door obviously doesn't go all the way up to the ceiling. I don't think I've ever seen a house where the door goes, the internal door goes all the way up to the ceiling. Yeah, I've just seen one. Hang on. Yeah, I just turned my head 90 degrees and immediately saw a door that goes all the way up to the ceiling. But that's not very common. Most doors, most internal doors don't go all the way up to the ceiling. Yeah, so normally an internal door does not go all the way up to the ceiling. So if you've got a heat source in here, you've got a wood burner in here, and a nice fire in there, you're going to get the heat that goes up to the ceiling, and it just floats around up here. The heat is not necessarily going to go out through the door and into the next room. It wants to go up all the time. And then you've got cold air here that's getting in the way of it. And it sounds silly, but this is quite often the case. So if you want to get around that, you can put a little fan in the wall, through the wall, that's going to push hot air from this room into this room. And what you want then is one of these little fan. This one's very dirty and dusty. I found this in the loft above the workshop. So yeah, one of those. Now, I know I've been talking about off-grid. This isn't necessarily an off-grid solution. It is an off-grid solution, however, if you have solar panels and a battery bank, then you can use one of these. You can also get these that run on 12 volts. But you can also think a little bit bigger than this. And yeah, I thought a little bit bigger than this. So, this is a cross-section of my house. Downstairs and upstairs. The chimney is here. Here is the wood burner. That goes up into the chimney. So in this room I have a lot of heat. And then there's a door here that goes into the kitchen. And then we've got another wall here that goes into the hallway. Wow, this is a real masterpiece here, Mr. Parry. And here we have stairs. Yeah, nothing's to scale. So, we've got a lot of heat in here. How do we get the heat into the rest of the house? Well, the first thought I had was drill a hole in the ceiling, up here. So I've got a lot of heat in this room, and the heat's going to go up through the ceiling, up to the top floor. And then I thought, well, hang on a minute, this isn't the most effective way of doing it. So then I thought, drill a hole, put a fan in here, and push cold air down. So instead of letting the warm air make its way up, push the cold air down from the top floor. And that way I'll get an air circulation in the whole house. So the cold air comes down, it goes through the living room with the wood burner where it's warm, it goes out into the kitchen, and it goes out into the hallway, goes up the stairs, into the bedroom, through the bedroom, there's a door here as well, and back here, nice warm air, and then it goes round and it carries on circulating. And that would be a very effective way to maintain the same temperature in the whole house. Now, I didn't do this. I was planning on doing it, I got all the bits for it, and then I worked out that it wasn't necessary. What happens now is the temperature in the living room is normally around about, I think around about 24 degrees. And that's warm, but it's a living room. So I'm not doing anything that's, you know, there's no physical exertion that happens in the living room. I'm sitting in front of the fire reading a book, or something like that. In the kitchen, it's around 20 degrees. And that's a good temperature for, you know, you're doing a bit more in the kitchen, you're cooking food, you're doing whatever you're doing in the kitchen there. 20 degrees, that's a good temperature. In the bedroom, it's probably around 17 degrees, let's say. And that, for me, that is an ideal bedroom temperature. If it's too hot, I can't sleep. I'd rather have it a little bit cooler and a little bit heavier duvet. So 17 degrees in the bedroom, that's ideal. And then it's also about 17 degrees in here as well. It might be a little bit warm in here because we're underneath the living room. So yeah, maybe let's call it 18 degrees. And this is my office, and that's ideal as well. So that's perfect. So I was going to do this, I didn't do it because it wasn't necessary. And that means that I don't have to, for the first thing, I don't have to drill a hole from upstairs to downstairs. And that I think is a good thing. This little Swedish house, it's made of timber. So it's got really, really thick timber walls, and there's insulation. There's sawdust insulation. I think there's about a foot of insulation between the downstairs and the upstairs floors. So if there's somebody downstairs, you can't hear them. Well, if they shout, you can hear them. But it's not like you can hear everything through the walls and through the ceilings. If I drilled a hole from the top floor to the bottom floor, you'd be able to hear everything. And I've kind of got used to, you know, not being able to hear stuff, and I like that. And the other thing is that obviously I don't need to pay the electricity company to run the fan. And there we have it then, that's how I heat my house. It's been quite cold this winter, and I've been lovely and warm. It hasn't been a hassle to heat the house in this way. I turned off the heat pump in October, so since October I haven't paid anything to the electricity company, and I haven't made their shareholders any richer, and that makes me even warmer. So simple and reliable solutions, that in my mind is just the way to go. And at the risk of sounding like somebody in middle management, streamline your processes. And that sounds stupid and pretentious, but I can't think of another way to word it. But what I mean by that, think everything through. So I've thought through how I process my firewood, how I store the firewood, how I bring the firewood in, how I carry the firewood in from the woodshed to the house, how I store the firewood in the house. Firewood, kindling, newspapers to light the fire, it's all got to be where it needs to be, because otherwise it's just going to be a hassle. If you have to go out 3 times an evening to bring in firewood, well, that's fun for a couple of days, and then it's not fun anymore, and then you're back to paying for electricity to heat the house. So hopefully I've inspired somebody to, I don't know, maybe live a little bit more of a simpler and a more meaningful life. If I did inspire you, you can subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, it helps the channel out enormously, and you can get notifications and you can see more of this sort of stuff. I'm going to be doing more of this. I'm going to talk a little bit about the heat pump later on, and I think I'll also talk a little bit about how I fix the chimney, because that sounds like a very daunting thing to do, but it actually isn't. It's actually entirely doable. So I'll go through that. Oh, till next time. See you.